your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition.
Hello, I'm Naveen Day. Thanks for joining us this Saturday, September the 27th. The union representing Canada's postal workers has called for a cross-country strike in the wake of the federal government announcing major reforms to Canada Post. The Canadian Union of Postal Workers said it was, quote, outraged and appalled by the changes laid out on Thursday. Joel Lightbound, the minister responsible for the insolvent Canada Post, detailed a number of changes, including authorizing Canada Post to end home delivery. About 4 million addresses still receive that service.
The government is removing the moratorium on the conversion to community mailboxes. 3/4 of Canadians already receive mail through community, apartment, or rural mailboxes, while 1/4 still receive door-to-door delivery. It's an expensive service, and by way of example, delivering mail to an individual address costs the corporation $279 a year, whereas delivering mail to a community mailbox costs $157 a year. I'm authorizing Canada Post to introduce community mailboxes to approximately 4 million more addresses, which will save the corporation nearly $400 million per year in due term.
RCMP say a 6-year-old Alberta boy remains missing after becoming lost in the wilderness near a campground in Crow's Nest Pass. Darius McDougall was reported missing on September 21st at 11:30 a.m. He went for a walk with 6 family members, all youths, but became separated from them. Search teams of more than 100 people are involved in the search, aided by drones, helicopters, dogs, and thermal imaging. Adam Kennedy from the Search and Rescue Association of Alberta provided an update on the search at a Thursday afternoon press conference.
The current average search radius is approximately 4 kilometers, with some of the trail searches extending out to approximately 8 kilometers. Overnight, ground teams continued searching with support from RCMP Air Services, Civil Air Search and Rescue Association drones, and the Canadian Search Dog Association dogs. Today, there are approximately 120 personnel on the scene from across Alberta and British Columbia, continuing the ground search. They are supported by RCMP Air Services and drones from Casera and St. Paul Search and Rescue. Additionally, technology has been employed that allows for drone footage to be analyzed by software, searching for anomalies that the human eye may miss. To provide additional clarity regarding any involvement of the military, although we keep all of our options open, at this time they have not been deployed.
Now, Darius is autistic, which could pose some communication challenges. He is described as 4 feet tall with short brown hair. He was last seen wearing a blue-gray hoodie and sweats. If you have any contact with Darius, you are asked to call Crow's Nest Pass RCMP at 403-562-2866. The parliamentary budget officer is warning Canadians to brace themselves for a higher than expected deficit in the upcoming federal budget. Jason Jakes projects the federal government will post an annual deficit of about $68 billion this year, up from more than $51 billion last year. He says an economy weakened by Canada's trade war with the U.S. is dragging down Ottawa's tax revenue and pushing deficits higher as the Liberals boost capital spending. Meantime, the head of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation says Liberal spending needs to be reined in.
Carney sold Canadians on this idea that he was going to be different than Justin Trudeau. Well, when it comes to the debt, the truth is that he's borrowing even more, right? He's planning to borrow even more. Like, here's what the PBO numbers show, that over the next 4 years, Carney will add about $255 billion to the debt. Well, for comparison, over those same number of years, Trudeau was planning to add about $131 billion to the debt. So, let that sink in for a second and realize how crazy it is that Carney is planning to add about $100 billion more to the debt than even what Trudeau was planning over the next 4 years.
The Supreme Court of Canada has stepped into a BC ostrich controversy. The court has granted a stay of execution for 400 ostriches at Universal Ostrich Farms near the town of Edgewood in southeastern British Columbia. Agents with the Canadian Food Inspection Agency showed up at the farm this week to plan to cull the farm's herd. The CFIA said the cull was necessary to comply with federal regulations after avian flu was detected in some of the animals last December. Kitty Pasitny and her mother, farm co-owner Karen Esperson, were both arrested after refusing to leave the property. They claim the remaining ostriches have developed herd immunity. Here's their reaction the moment they learned the Supreme Court had stepped in.
Omar just said, tell everybody, intern state granted from Supreme Court of Canada. Granted. It could pass. It's granted. They're safe. Right now they're safe today. They live today. Just Omar's going to go through the paperwork, but he said it's been granted from the Supreme Court of Canada. They live today, and we have time. There's some time to figure out the next steps and the next options. He said it was Miracle Wednesday. Miracle Wednesday. What does it feel like? We just had a prayer. We just finished the prayer. God is
I just don't know what to say. I'm so overjoyed. I couldn't be happier. I just want to run and hug my birds, but I can't right now.
In Ottawa Tuesday, Lethbridge Conservative MP Rachel Thomas unveiled a new private members bill aimed at keeping sexual predators behind bars. Bill C-246 would seek to amend the criminal code to require judges to impose consecutive sentences on individuals convicted of sexual offenses instead of concurrent sentences.
Since 2015, sexual assaults have increased nearly 75%. Folks, let that sink in for a moment. 75%. And offenses against children by 120%. Liberal reforms have repeatedly prioritized repeat offenders, sending the wrong message that protecting predators matters more than protecting Canadians. This practice is wrong, and it must end. Sexual predators should never receive reduced sentences.
Thomas says under the bill, sexual predators will no longer be able to stack their crimes and walk away with reduced sentences. Each crime would have its own penalty, and victims would receive the justice they deserve. And speaking of getting tough on crime, Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives continue to push for jail, not bail, and they cite the revolving door for repeat offenders. Political commentator Brian Lilly says the Conservatives have it right on this one, even though Justice Minister Sean Fraser lashed out saying the Conservatives don't understand the law.
This whole system that the Liberals brought in 2019 has made a disaster out of the bail system. Now, there's more that needs to be done. We need to build more jails. That's at the provincial level. We need to build more jails so that jails aren't overcrowded and judges aren't letting people out because they feel bad for them. We need to speed up trials so that people get a trial in 3 months and not 3 years. But the bail system as it stands now is a get out of jail free card, and that has to be fixed. Minister Fraser is not much of a lawyer. He has less experience with criminal law than the average court reporter.
The federal government will begin testing out its buyback of assault-style firearms in Nova Scotia. Public Safety Minister Gary Anandasangri made the announcement in Ottawa.
The goal here is to use the pilot to test the online portal and firearms collection process in collaboration with the Cape Breton Regional Police Service. We will also test the destruction of firearms with our external service provider, as well as our compensation payments to participants. Support from a dedicated call center will be available to all participants in both official languages. The application and key information will also be available in 7 Indigenous languages: Mohawk, Anishinaabe, Inuktitut, Cree, Algonquin, Dene, and Mi'kmaq. We want to be sure everything is working properly before we open the program nationwide later in the fall.
This program is really a way to help lawful gun owners stay in compliance with the law. We see this as giving them an opportunity to surrender what they are no longer allowed to possess, to prevent criminal liability, and to demonstrate that this can be an effective process for removing dangerous firearms from our community.
This move follows an embarrassing couple of days for the public safety minister. The Canadian Coalition for Firearms Rights circulated a recording of Gary Anandasangri where he suggested to an acquaintance that they shouldn't worry about being arrested for refusing to turn in a banned firearm because municipal police don't have the resources to devote to such matters. The minister didn't know he was being recorded. He's also heard saying the Carney government was only keeping this program to satisfy Liberal voters in Quebec. When confronted about it in the Commons, he would only say his comments were misguided. The government of Alberta has reached a tentative contract with the Alberta Teachers Association, which, if ratified, would avert an October 6th strike. In a statement released Wednesday morning, Finance Minister Nate Horner said the two sides reached the tentative deal last Friday. He thanked both parties for their work in developing a deal which he says reflects elements that are good for teachers and the education system as a whole. Horner reiterated the government's promised $10 billion investment in education, including a plan to hire 3,000 teachers to reduce class sizes and support student learning. 51,000 public, Catholic, and Francophone school teachers belonging to the ATA will vote on the deal beginning on Saturday, with the vote concluding on Monday evening. The president of the Alberta Teachers Association issued a brief statement. Jason Schilling says teachers do not take the decision before them lightly. They recognize what is on the line for this vote and remain committed to an outcome that prioritizes the future of our public education system. So, what do parents have to say about the news of this agreement? We hear from a number of parents, plus more stories from around our province. Don't go away. Welcome back. Here's a look at some stories from around our province. Parents in Lethbridge have shown optimism from the news of the tentative contract with the province and Alberta Teachers Association. BCN was able to speak to a number of parents who gave us a general consensus that if it's a good deal for the teachers, it's a good deal for them.
So the teachers are actually doing a great job. They need to be actually appreciated for their job, what they're doing now. They need to get really good pay, so what they're doing is actually good. If they are satisfied with that agreement, I think it will work out really well.
I'm definitely glad it's never not too late that they finally have decided to do something worthwhile. There are so many teachers that have been impacted, looking for different jobs, wondering if this is right for them and can stay, and so this looks like finally there's promise that they're going to support teachers.
Is the Alberta Next panel making headway? Former Premier Jason Kenney, who's become a staunch critic of Alberta separation, has called it, quote, bananas to hold a referendum on the province leaving Canada. To talk about Alberta independence is our legislative reporter and Alberta correspondent for the National Post, Tyler Dawson, who sat down with BCN's Jeanette Roche.
So, Tyler, he's gone so far as to predict marital breakups, business breakups, deep division within communities if a succession referendum goes ahead. So what else is he saying?
Well, he's basically saying that you have the thing about separation is that it's not a super widely held view. I mean, you've got lots of polling that shows that Albertans are generally upset with Confederation. They're upset with Ottawa. They're angry in general. But the subset of those people who are outright separatists is relatively small, especially when you look at the number of people who are sort of committed activists to that cause, involved with a political party, involved with some sort of advocacy group. You're really not talking about that many people. So what Kenney is saying is that you're really allowing maybe a few thousand people in the province to sort of hijack this entire process, hold this referendum with all those consequences potentially that you just mentioned, and you know the other sort of 5 million of us are dragged along for the ride. So that was his sort of main criticism of this, saying that there's going to be all these consequences. It's not a significant proportion of the population. I mean, he pointed out to the fact that the separatists have never really won an election in Alberta. The only time that's ever happened was a by-election in 1982, and like 2 months later, the separatist candidate lost his seat. So he's really saying that this is not a big part of Alberta's political culture, and that it's just sort of derailing social harmony, I suppose you could say. And what was interesting about it is this came up a few days ago, and Premier Danielle Smith was then asked about it for her comments on it, what she thought about it. And what she said is she's actually working really hard to avert the possibility of having a referendum by way of the Alberta Next panel and things like that. So you don't have anything like consensus at the political level in this province that this is a good idea or that Alberta should actually leave the province or leave the country, which of course is very, very different than Quebec, where that is where it's just not the case. You have the party leading the polls as a separatist party in Quebec right now.
Lethbridge emergency crews responded to 2 incidents Wednesday that occurred hours apart on 13th Street North. In the first incident, a red Jeep Compass drove through the storefront of a Filipino grocery store where LPS say a 25-year-old driver accidentally hit the gas pedal instead of the brake, hammering into the glass of the store. No one was injured in the crash, but the SUV and store suffered extensive damage. The driver has been ticketed as she did not have valid insurance and only carried her GDL driver's license without proper supervision. This latest incident comes only a month after an incident across the street where a truck rammed into a Tim Hortons. Also on 13th Street North, Lethbridge emergency crews responded to a blaze around 10:15 Wednesday evening. Crews were able to control the fire at the rear end of a commercial building, preventing it from spreading to nearby structures. Damage was limited to the building's exterior, with smoke affecting inside. Meantime, social media videos have emerged of the fire occurring at the Northside No Frills loading dock, showing flames coming out from a corner near the loading door and someone stepping out attempting to extinguish the flames. Damage costs and the cause of the fire remain under investigation. The town of Coaldale is getting rid of its photo radar program for the remainder of 2025. Coaldale's automated traffic enforcement photo radar program has been temporarily suspended because of a growing backlog of tickets. Mayor Jack Van Ryan says the decision was made during a special council meeting because of the town's ongoing labor strife with its workers, as well as possible disruptions at Canada Post. The mayor also says the photo radar program has been suspended at school, playground, and construction zones as well.
And part of that discussion was the possible postal strike, and back in May, we were notified by the provincial government that we would have to seek other means of getting photo radar tickets out to the people that are going to be receiving them, and we were supposed to hold them until we were able to find out when we could release them. And over the course of that time, we've accumulated between 600 and 700 tickets. It was decided that it probably wouldn't be fair to send out a violation ticket 4.5 months after the offense occurred. Well, we have an RCMP detachment in Coaldale, and Coaldale currently contracts 9 members from the RCMP, and they were notified of this as well, and we've asked them to continue doing their monitoring of school zones, playground zones, construction sites, and basically everywhere in our community to make sure that people obey the law.
Mayor Van Ryan says that in the first quarter of 2026, the town will go through the program once more to determine what they're going to do with it in the future. Now, some freelance courier work could possibly end you up in jail. The Lethbridge Police Service is warning local job seekers to be cautious of fraudulent job postings that may involve delivery work of a criminal nature. Using email, social media, and other local buy and sell forums like Kijiji, fraudsters are posting delivery driver positions that may actually involve moving stolen goods, transporting drugs, or laundering money. Sergeant Kevin Talbot with the Economic Crimes Unit of LPS says this criminal ring is just one part of a more commonly known scam.
We recently saw an influx of grandparent scams, and what we're noticing is that the couriers that are involved in this are often local people that have applied for a job that they've seen online, and it's to be a courier with very few details on what the job is, but they can make some quick money. And all their job is to go pick up envelopes full of money, deposit it somewhere, and then move on to the next victim. In some cases, they actually know that they're involved in a scam and they're complicit. In other cases, they're just simply responding to an ad to try to make some money, and then get caught up in this, realizing after the fact that they were participating in this grandparent scam.
Police say scammers often use these unsuspecting people as mules to distance themselves from the crime. They add accepting such work knowingly or unknowingly can result in serious criminal charges. While southern Alberta farmers are still working on the 2025 harvest, some of the early returns appear to be positive. Ken Coles, CEO of Farming Smarter, says the season started off quite dry and it was an early spring, so a lot of farmers in eastern Alberta planted early. Normally that's a good thing, but this year it wasn't. And while conditions remain dry across much of southern and eastern Alberta, Coles says the Lethbridge area saw better outcomes.
One of the bigger challenges, though, is that the prices have dropped, and that seems to always be the case if you have a decent year. There's a number of tariffs on crops like canola and peas, and even wheat is now starting to drop. Overall, I think it's been a decent year. It's been a nice harvest. September's been a beautiful month to allow farmers to get the harvest and crops off. But of course, now we have to look at the challenge of marketing those crops and what's happened to those prices. Harvest is getting close to being complete here in southern Alberta. We're now taking off things like corn silage and potatoes, and there's still probably a few things left to do, like some dry beans I see out there, and some hemp is being harvested, as well as later on the sugar beets will need to be harvested.
Some of the major types of crops grown in southern Alberta include wheat, potatoes, sugar beets and beans, alfalfa, and canola. We are just 2 or 3 days away, depending on what day you are watching this, from National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. If you're in southern Alberta, an appropriate way to recognize the day is to visit Writing on Stone Provincial Park. BCN's Jeanette Rocher met up with a tour guide to learn more about this historic site. Here is a small part of that interview.
My understanding is it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
Correct, yeah. So in 2019, this area received a UNESCO designation for outstanding universal value and as a living cultural site. So this place is most associated with the Blackfoot people. It's likely that there have been other First Nations people for whom this place is important as well, but really we're in the heart of Blackfoot country. And this place has always been known as special to the Blackfoot people. This is still a place where people come to visit to connect with this remarkable place.
Yeah. Oh, it's so easy to connect with the land. Like it just feels almost so spiritual when you're here. It's just beautiful. And you have brought us to this amazing spot where there are actually pictographs, petroglyphs right around us. Maybe you can show us some of these.
Yeah, for sure. I'd be happy
right
to.
now.
But the markings that we find right here are very distinctive, and we see lots of individual people who are holding these great big round shields.
Well, Rebecca, thank you so much for being my personal tour guide out here at Writing on Stone.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for coming.
It's just been fascinating.
Municipal elections are approaching with election date on October the 20th. BCN's Paul Arthur had the opportunity to sit down and chat with Margaret Madalich, who has some very interesting views on civic politics. And if you're watching us online, that full interview is available on our YouTube channel.